a lot goes into the injury, the surgical fixation, and the recovery. A lot of the complications that delay these type of athletes from getting back happen within the first couple of weeks of surgery. Years ago, Alex Smith, quarterback for multiple teams in the NFL, had a very similar injury, slightly worse, and his surgical fixation did not go as well as it appears Aidan Hutchinson's had. He had multiple infections and surgeries. It took him 2 years to get back. From the videos that Aidan Hutchinson has put on social media, from seeing him at the Lions game, we see that he's walking now with no assisted devices. He's walking fast, even jogging on underwater treadmills. So he's going through his rehab the way you would expect someone to be at the 7-8 week marker. Without those complications, we can see a return to sport as early as 4 months, some would argue as early as 3. The rehab has multiple goals, and you have to walk before you can run. You have to run before you can jump and cut and do a lot of these moves that defensive tackles have to do. You have to be able to move before you can tackle. So there are benchmarks and guidelines. They simply don't wait to the 3-4 month mark and say, okay, you're good to play. Every day he's getting tested. At first, he needed to let the affected bone heal, get back some of his range of motion in the knee and the ankle because he hadn't used them in a while. Now it's all about strengthening. Those muscles in the quadriceps, the hamstrings, the calves, the glutes, they haven't worked properly for 2 months, and he needs that operative side, the side with the tibia fracture, to be at least 90% as strong as the non-operative side for him to go back safely. Because what the fear is, there's no doubt that Aidan Hutchinson works hard. There's no doubt that he has effort and he has passion. But if he goes back and his limb is not strong enough, he's going to compensate, put stress on things like his ACL, his meniscus, and other parts of his body. So as much as everyone wants him to go back, he's got to do the work first to try to decrease the chance of an injury in the future. It appears as recovery has gone very, very normal. I do think the injury may have been a little bit more painful, a little bit more powerful than we observed because he has been protected from the team. And while he's been at games, he hasn't been on the sideline. He's been protected. I think he's working his butt off. And I think there's a little bit of a gamesmanship. I think they're keeping this under wraps on whether he can play or not, because that means that teams either have to start worrying about him and devoting time to worry about him when he won't play, or they're not going to worry about him, then he will play. So he's recovery normal. I think of Kevin Ware, the Louisville basketball player that did this in college basketball about 10 years ago. He was on the court walking around the next weekend for the Final Four. We haven't seen Hutchinson on the sideline, but I'm not so sure that's because he can't. I think it's because he's dedicated all this time on his treatment. He's kind of staying away from the team, not being a distraction, taking care of his business. I think he's going to keep on making progress. He's got some of the best doctors, rehabilitation people in the world taking care of him. Unfortunately, the timing is going to be very, very careful. I do think if we're fortunate to make the Super Bowl, it's exactly almost 4 months from the date of injury, about 17 weeks. I do think there's a good chance he'll play. I think if we're talking first, second round of the playoffs, that's more 3 months, 16, 17 weeks. I don't think he'll be ready by that time. The strength in his leg is very, very important. I'm sure he's going to the weight room pretty religiously right now with the rehabilitation doctors. If he were to return sometime mid-end of December, first week of January at the latest, is when he would need to start running, see how it felt, how comfortable was he, can he start building the acceleration, making those cuts. I think they'll know in the Lions organization by the end of the season what the chances are he'll come back. And they may not share that with us, but I think they'll be aware. My only hope is they fight the temptation and bring him back too early, because while we definitely need him, he's one of the best players in football, I don't want him to injure something else that might keep him out of next year. So I'm a believer. I'm an optimist. I do think if the Lions make the Super Bowl, that he will be eligible to play. I think he'll want to come back earlier. I just don't think it's the medically safe thing for the majority of patients in these situations. 91% of NFL players with this injury come back and play. Only a few have come back in 3 months.